I remember I went to this networking event, and there was this one woman who started talking, and she said, literally, I think she had dropped her last child off at college, and she said, I went from 100% chaotic life to zero. I have nothing. I don't even know. When we asked, like, what are your hobbies? What do you want to do? What are your interests? She had no idea, because she had not had a moment in the last like 20 years to think that. No one had even asked her, what are you interested in? What do you want to do with your life? And it was like that. She just started crying.
Welcome to Imperfect Momming. Our children are constantly looking to us for examples. The term role model doesn't quite cut it here. We are shaping their worldview with every move we make. You see, it's not in the lectures we give or moments where we're actively attempting to teach them. It's in the micro movements we make, the unconscious ways in which we navigate life. We are constantly teaching our children how to show up for themselves, their friends, their future partners, and even their future children. So what can we do to ensure we are raising thoughtful, compassionate, self-aware human beings? We have to become them ourselves. No one is perfect, but we can all still be better, and it starts with self-healing. Let's get to it. Welcome back to Imperfect Momming. I am your host, Alicia Lyons, and we have a very special guest today, Pearl Mashour. Welcome to Imperfect Momming.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay. So I am a woman empowerment life coach, and I host a podcast called Female Fluence. But before all of this, I was actually an educator. I was teaching elementary level kids. And most importantly, I'm a mother of 3 kids. So I have a 19-year-old daughter, a 17-year-old daughter, and a 13-year-old son.
And how did you get into women empowerment?
Okay, that is a long journey. I think there's a few factors. One, I am Persian. And with that being said, I witnessed a lot of gender stereotypes throughout my life, a lot of patriarchy. And I just felt like it was kind of my path or my journey to change that a little bit, even though, I mean, obviously I can't do it everywhere, but one woman at a time. Starting in my own household, when I had 2 daughters, I felt like it was really important that I model for them how they, as a woman, they're going to have tougher battles, and they need to voice their opinion and set their boundaries at an early age. So kind of those things along the way just led me to this journey of doing things more for myself, which in return, I felt like I need to give back and kind of create a movement where I can help other women do the same.
I love that. I was just thinking this morning, because I'm diving into different researches on how we operate as women based on our cycle, and how the hormones that our cycle produces create different things. And inside business, you can use the power of your cycle to be more outgoing, like during ovulation, and when you should be resting during menstruation, and all that, all this really interesting things.
That's interesting.
That I didn't know growing up. You know, we've all kind of like our period is just this nuisance that we have to deal with once a month for 20, 30 years. And now I'm reading a book that's about fasting in sync with your cycle. It's just really fascinating. And I have one son. And so I'm like, man, I wish I could pass this on to my daughter.
That is good information. I mean, our bodies are incredible. And if we can be more in tune to it, it can really help us go a long way.
Yeah. So I love that you started at home with your daughters, and with, you know, what you saw going on. And so what do you do with your clients?
So what I do, what I've witnessed, especially women 40 and over, is where they have kind of lost themselves. As you all know, whether we decide that, I mean, for me personally, it was a tough decision to stop working and stay at home. And that's, I think, a lot of, I mean, I know since, your podcast is about mothering, it's a very challenging decision that as females that we always have to deal with. So that was one of the points where I just felt like, but I had no regrets. I dived completely into it. I enjoyed every moment, and I tried to bring my teaching background and kind of create a classroom like in my garage and teach them all the sight words and do activities with them. And there was a moment there that I thought I would homeschool them, but it was just too much. I couldn't do it. I mean, my hat goes off to all the parents that do homeschooling. Anyhow, at that point, as the kids got older, and it's like you're volunteering and your entire life evolves around your children, there was a moment where I just felt, oh my gosh, like my kids are growing up and they don't even, like, if I want to volunteer, they're kind of like, Mom, do you really have to? That's when it starts off where they want to like say goodbye to like, miles away so that their friends don't see it. Things shifted because they just got older, which is the natural stage of life. But for me personally, I had turned 40 at that point, and I just felt really exhausted. I felt like I kind of abandoned myself, and I had forgotten who I was as a person. My only role was to be a mom. And it's a kind of, I feel like, to all other moms listening, it's a really frightening stage to be at, because you just feel like you have no identity. Like you don't even know what your hobbies are. You don't know what your interests are. You don't even know, like, if I go back to work, are they going to accept me? I haven't, worked, or my resume is completely empty for like all these years. So, and, everything has changed. Technology has changed. It's a hard thing to kind of grasp and go on. So anyhow, long story short, it's at that point where it led me to kind of a journey of rediscovering myself. And because of that, I had originally, because I felt very fatigued, I went to the doctor, and the doctor was like, oh, you're premenopausal. I was like, whoa, I just turned 40 like 2 days ago. So that just shocked me. But throughout that pushed me to kind of just say, okay, like I need to tune into myself and see what's going on. So I started really like diving back into my hot yoga classes, meditating, getting self-help books, kind of educating myself and changing my eating habits, and kind of paying attention to all the wrong things that I was doing. And of course, the biggest thing of all, which I still continue to work on, is that guilt of saying, okay, I need to create some time for me. It's okay. I'm not a bad mom. I'm not a bad wife. I'm a human, and I need to give back a little to myself. And throughout that journey, when I went back to the doctor a year after and did my blood work, I was no longer premenopausal. My body had talked to me and had said, you need to like wake up and shift things, because I was having chronic pain. There was all these other things that was happening. And so with that being said, I just felt like, it was really inside. My inside wasn't aligned. I wasn't following my path. I didn't feel in the flow. I was not balanced. And so then I was having all these different like health problems. And so that's when I realized that I want to do coaching. And of course, woman was a huge dear to my heart, because that was what I had found out that I needed to do to fix myself. So I was like, if I have discovered this, then I can help other women go on this, I'm sure they're on this path, because I would see it. I would go to events, even my own friends, and I would see them. They were really there, but they were not there. And that's how I felt for a while. I would go to social activities and I wasn't really present. I just felt like on autopilot, kind of doing everything that I was supposed to be doing, but not really enjoying myself and not really being there, because I felt invisible. And so that's how my journey began. And so from the life coaching, I was like, I'm really gonna get specific into woman empowerment, because that's my passion is. And then I created the podcast because I wanted to have a very safe, free of judgment platform where women feel comfortable to, listen to each other, to get inspired with different stories, these bold stories that my guests come and share with my listeners about what they've gone through, how they survive, and how they have challenged themselves to move forward. So that's how it all worked out.
Yeah, I love that. And it's such a common story of I become a mom and then I don't know who I am. And you don't really realize it in the younger ages because they need you so much. And then as they stop needing you, then it's your time kind of frees up a lot.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, what do I do with all this free time now that my children don't want me to drop them off at school? They want me to drop them off 3 blocks away.
Yeah, I think at that point, you're just so high on, well, number one, you're so exhausted. You don't even have a moment to think with toddlers and babies and everything, but you're so high on their like love and cuddle and all the cuteness of that stage of your life that you don't even realize. It's like, oh, I haven't taken a shower for 2 days. It's okay. I love my kids. I'm just going to cuddle with them. And it's a fact of the matter is, yes, all of a sudden they grow up. I remember I went to this networking event and there was this one woman who started talking and she said, literally, I think she had dropped her last child off at college. And she said, I went from 100% chaotic life to 0. I have nothing. I don't even know. When we asked, like, what are your hobbies? What do you want to do? What are your interests? She had no idea because she had not had a moment in the last like 20 years to think that. No one had even asked her, what are you interested in? What do you want to do with your life? And it was like that, she just started crying. And that was like a shock to her system because, you know, I feel like, I mean, I wouldn't say everyone, but most of the time men don't think like that. I mean, at least I see it around, like with my husband, he's all, you know, always like, no, we have more time for ourselves because their life doesn't shift so much, right? It's like when we have kids, our bodies change, everything changes. So it's like, you know, we are mentally, emotionally, I mean, everything changes. That's why we kind of lose ourselves in the process, which is fine, but learning how to come back and rediscover ourselves is the key.
I'd had a guest a couple weeks ago that talked about the biological, the biology that takes over. That like I birthed this child and now I need to take care of this child because without me, it dies. And so then a lot of times without conscious awareness, then husband gets put on the back burner. So when kids leave the house, husbands are like, woohoo, I get to be number one again. And moms are like, I don't know who I am anymore.
Mom is like, I get to first find out who I am so I can help you.
Exactly. So
it is very true. So true. And that's one of the things that I've heard, and I actually had a guest on one of my episodes, is where there was a relationship coach that said and insisted that you need to make sure that your husband is number one priority versus your kids. The husband comes first, and it's on yourself and then the kids, because the kids will thrive on that. They will thrive on seeing a wonderful, happy relationship and a happy mom who's not burnt out and they'll respect you more, you know, because you're modeling that yes, we have to all have self-care for ourselves. And then when the kids leave, you still have that connection with your husband and yourself because you've been working on it the whole time. But it's hard. You know, it's easy to talk about, but it's hard to balance all of those areas of your life, you know.
Yeah, it definitely is. My situation was that my whole identity was wrapped up in everything that wasn't me. And I lost a lot of those things that my identity was wrapped up in. And so it was like, okay, well, who am I? And this happened really early on in my son's life. So, you know, he was less than 1.5 years old. And so my journey of like connecting to myself and figuring and rebuilding myself from the ground up happened when he was younger. So I've had a privilege of modeling to him, like, I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning because that's my me time. And if you wake up at 5, that's cool, but I'm not serving you at 5 o'clock in the morning. That's where I'm taking care of me. And you're welcome to come and join me on the couch and snuggle with me at 5 in the morning when I'm meditating, but that's about all we're going to be doing. You know, it's not, I'm not running
You're
around.
setting your boundary right there
Exactly.
with
Exactly.
respect.
Yeah. And it's a totally different thing. And, you know, I've been grateful for my journey, but you mentioned my favorite word to dive into, which is the guilt that you had. Do you want to talk any more about that?
Of course. I mean, the guilt is never goes away. Even though it's like with my experiences and my kids are older now, and I still have those guilt days. But what I try to do right now, actually, one of the greatest advice that I have for women listening out there is really, really to work on self-love. I feel like once we learn as females that it's okay, that we need to be our own, truly like our own best friend. We need to have conversations with ourselves, but not just like the bad conversations, not just being critical with ourselves, but really having conversations and like saying, you know what, hey, you're doing a great job. Like, you know, talking to your inner champion and not just be critical with yourself. If you feel really down, but you pushed yourself and you made it to whatever you needed to do to finish your work for that day, clean up the kitchen, go to the gym, acknowledge it and say, hey, Pearl, you know, you did a great job. So those are like the first few steps that we need to do to actually start the relationship with ourselves by being kind to ourselves. Once we start doing that and being good to ourselves, then our confidence will grow and we will change. So the confidence and self-love are intertwined. And once we are able to manage these steps, then we start growing into a different person. And when we are able to do that, we're able to kind of let go a little bit of the guilt and the shame because they're connected too. So for example, you're exhausted and you really would like a girls' weekend away. So you go away for 2 days and you have a great time. If you are living in that story that's of guilt, if you know, telling that story to yourself like, oh my gosh, I miss that soccer game this weekend because I wasn't there, but I've only gone to like the 50 other games, right? And so I missed that game, I wasn't there for the pickup or whatnot. And instead of enjoying yourself in that moment, you're telling these stories. The pattern follows that you feel really bad about yourself. And so when it's Sunday comes along and you come back home, instead of being, you know, relaxed and rejuvenated, you are going to come back and the house is now a mess because you haven't been there. You are in that very level of guilt. And so you're just depleted, even though you were supposed to go and recharge. So your kids, your husband, your family are going to catch on that energy. And so instead of everyone having a good energy, you're expressing that guilt towards them because you feel bad about yourself. You're not in the higher level of, you know, I feel good, I feel comfortable, I feel recharged. But on the reverse side, if you do something for yourself like a getaway, and you are just like, you know what? It's okay. They're going to be fine. And I deserve this. It's good for me to have a little me time. And then you go back home and you're refreshed and you're recharged and you're rejuvenated. You're going to be working from a whole different level. So your energy is going to be high. You're going to be completely different with the kids. You'll be excited to see them. You'll be excited to come back home. You've missed everyone. And it's like you can let go of the mess and just be happy that they survived and everything is fine. So, and that's the same exact story, but a person who is in a level of shame and guilt and a person who isn't. So it depends on what story you want to tell yourself. So we can start as females changing those stories and just saying it's okay. Because we know 99% of the time, men do many things for themselves and they never fall in that level of, you know, kind of talking back to themselves and shaming themselves or feeling guilty that they had a long meeting and they missed that, you know, recital or whatnot. Things happen. It's okay. So it just depends how we look at things and change those stories that we keep telling ourselves so we can move away from feeling guilty and shameful about who we are.
Yeah, if you we focus on like what we're not doing for our kids while we're gone for those 2 days instead of focusing on what we are doing for them.
All the time, right?
Because what you're doing is you're modeling that you're self-care. You're teaching them, ideally you'd be teaching them to keep up the house while you're gone so you don't come back to the mess. And I've gone away for weekends at a time and come back to a mess. And, it doesn't take that much longer to clean it up than it did if I was there staying on top of it. Like, it's not, time's a big thing for me. So as soon as I reframed, like, take the dishes, never take more than 5 minutes with my dishwasher, laundry takes 5 minutes. It's
right.
Just like, as soon as I started like thinking of things that way, then it was like, oh, this is just a piece of cake. It's a 5 minute here and a 5 minute there, but you're modeling this self-care. You're teaching them how to take care of the house. Kids need chores just as much as anybody else. It's good for them. You don't want them to turn 18 and now they don't know how to do their own laundry or make a meal or do a dish. We're supposed to teach them those things. And so you going away is more likely that they're going to do those things and learn because you're not doing it for them, depending on who you are as a woman.
Of course.
So I love that. Is there a piece of advice that you want to give to moms?
So, that was actually my biggest advice was, if as a woman we learn that it's not selfish to prioritize, that makes us feel more vibrant and confident and energized, and we can be better moms, wives, women in general. So that would be the biggest advice I think throughout my experience as a mom of 3 kids, as a teacher, as a mom who was a stay-at-home mom, as a mom now who's working. That was a huge transition too, because my kids were used to having me at their beck and call. And it was a shift to all of a sudden be like, I'm so sorry, I'm recording, I have a client. If you see the sign on the door on my office, that was even hard for my oldest child. It wasn't even, to say the youngest, because they were so used to me being there for them, for picking up their friends, carpooling, making snacks, lunch, deep meals, anything. And so, but that's a hard transition. So if any of you are in that same situation where you're thinking, okay, maybe it's time for me to do something for myself or go back to work, you can't let that guilt take over. And you have to realize that when you do things for you, your kids are going to respect you more. They will respect your time more. I felt like the moment I started doing this and I had started working and trying to manage being the mom, and I love to cook. So I always try to have like the homemade meals, but it's hard. It's hard because they're used to something, all the time. And all of a sudden there'd be a day, it's like, oh no, I didn't get around to the dishes because I had a really busy work day, or I'm coming home late or whatnot. But they learn, they adjust. It's good for them. And they will respect you in the long run because they will realize that you are actually an individual. You're a human, you're a person, and you have needs and you have wants. And when you respect your own values, then your family will do the same thing. But if you don't prioritize and you always put yourself last on the list, then everyone else around you will do the exact same thing.
Absolutely. Is there a book that's been instrumental in your journey?
So I love reading. There are so many books, but one of my books that is actually in my nightstand, it's The 4 Agreements. It's one of those things that I follow the 4 Agreements. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's by Don Miguel Ruiz, and there's 4 agreements to it. The first one says you need to be impeccable with your words. So whatever it can be good or bad. So when you want to say something to someone, even with your child, your husband, somebody, think about it. What impact are you going to have on them? If you say something really negative, that's going to stay with them. That's going to be the energy they're going to carry out with them the whole day. At the same time, use magical words to fill their buckets. And this is not just your children. This is with anyone. Anywhere you go, you're at Trader Joe's, you're getting your groceries, say something nice to somebody. That's going to make their day. So that's the first agreement. The second one is don't take anything personal. That's been incredible for my journey. It's changed things around because I used to be a lot more sensitive and I would take things really personal and I would immediately just say, oh, no, they meant it that way. Now that has just made a whole worldwide difference for me. The third agreement is do not make assumptions. We all do that. We all can be judgmental. We make assumptions and we just jump into a conclusion without knowing all the facts. Mm-hmm. And the last agreement is always do your best. This book is very short. I've actually ordered the mini versions for my kids to follow through because I just feel like it's just 4 mini rules of life. If you can just follow that, you can be such a better person. Mm-hmm. And you can think differently. Your perspective on life changes and you take things a lot lighter and easier.
Yeah, that sounds like a great book. And like that it's a short read. It's like a little shot in the arm when you're ready for it.
Exactly.
Where can our listeners find you?
So you can go on my website. It's www.femalefluence, and that's FLUENCE, just like influence, but it's actually fluence. My podcast is on any podcast platform, and that's Female Fluence as well. I'm very active on LinkedIn and Instagram. And at Instagram, you can just go Pearl Mashour _ Female Fluence.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your work in the world and turning your pain into other people's empowerment.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on your show today.
Absolutely. So we'll have another episode of Imperfect Momming for you all coming next week. And until we meet again, keep healing. Bye, guys. Thank you for tuning in to Imperfect Momming. It's time for us to step up and realize that our power is not in trying to shape our children. Our power lies in shaping ourselves into the people we want our children to model themselves after. Don't just do it for your kids. Do it for yourself. When you become a more self-aware, compassionate, and confident person, you and everyone around you benefit. For more information about me and my work, visit AliciaLyons.com. That's ALYSIALYONS.com. And until we meet again, keep healing.